All right, let's get started. Thanks for attending our webinar about solar systems for RV and marine. This is Mark McHenry from Morningstar. I'll be your moderator for today's session, and today's presenters are Rebecca Sanchez, Vice President of Sales at Solarflexion, and Rob Rollo, President of Solar System Services. We're going to be recording this broadcast, and we will email you a link to the recording before the end of day tomorrow, so you'll get that. And we've also included a copy of the slide deck that we're using today, and that's in the handout section of your GoToWebinar pane that you can go ahead and download right now. And also a reminder, as you listen to the webinar, feel free to type any questions that you have in the questions chat on your GoToWebinar console. We'll address as many questions at the end as time permits. And if we don't get to your question before the end of the webinar, we can address it by email later. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda for today. We will share some information about Morningstar, Solarflexion, and Solar System Services. Rebecca Sanchez of Solarflexion will address the benefits of adding solar to your RV or boat, and also talk about the Wave RV marine kits. Rob Rollo of Solar System Services will talk about system design and charge controllers, and we'll end with the Q&A session. Let me take 20 seconds to share some information about Morningstar. Since 1993, we've been supplying charge controllers and inverters throughout the world in industrial, residential, and mobile RV and boating applications. And we have the widest charge controller product line and lowest hardware failure rate in the industry. So Morningstar designs and supplies charge controllers and inverters that Solarflexion distributes to customers individually or in kits that also include modules, batteries, and other components. And then Solarflexion partners with Solar System Services to provide outstanding customer support and consulting services for these consumers. So with that said, let me hand off to Rebecca Sanchez so she can take herself off mute and tell us a little bit more about Solarflexion and how to add solar to RV caravans and boats.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. As Mark mentioned, I'm Rebecca. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Solarflexion. Solarflexion is actually headquartered in Marietta, California, and we actually opened our doors in July of 2016 and then became incorporated in February of 2019. Our team here has over 75 years of combined experience in the renewable energy field, and we are very passionate about customer service. We believe here that we have responsibility to every customer as well as a responsibility to our industry. We really do pride ourselves on being fast, fun, and friendly here. Let me tell you a little bit more about who Solarflexion is. Solarflexion is a premier provider of high-quality solar energy products and services. We started as an e-commerce driven business that is supported by our online store where you can shop 24/7. So although our online platform is the foundation of who we are, we expanded our products and services and now specialize in both off-grid and grid-tie applications and projects. Our capabilities allow us to offer services such as system sizing, design, engineering, integration, troubleshooting, and product procurement. We do have strong partnerships, like Mark said, with the industry leaders such as Morningstar and Solar System Services, which allows us to service numerous industry sectors. We do work with both B2B and B2C markets. And, like I'd mentioned, we're always happy to help find solutions. Above all, our company philosophy here is to focus on the client's needs and deliver successful solutions without compromise. With that said, I'll go into a little bit about our mission and motto. So here at Solarflexion, we do believe that no job or request is too small. So a lot of times we do get DIYers asking for just components. And again, we will take time to listen. We're happy to work with businesses and, like I said, as well as DIYers. We recognize that online shopping and fast delivery drive the market. However, we also believe that nothing can take the place of human interaction. We do take time to listen and communicate with each individual who we interact with. Our customer service and attention to detail is what makes us different, and it truly sets us apart from the competition. Understanding that each application or request is unique, allows us to cater to you, the customer, making your experience your own. With that said, I need to be clear. We also have responsibility to our customers. It's important to note that as mentioned previously, we have responsibility to our industry. We will be very honest. We'll be transparent, letting you know if a request is unrealistic or if it will not work. Um, Although at times it can be difficult to turn down a sale, we do stand firm in our belief that we do not want to sacrifice functionality, reliability, safety, or sustainability just to make a sale. Our company motto here is we provide the best for our customers so we can provide the best for our families. Our goal here at Solarflexion is to provide the best service, value, and support for you, our customer. You're our family. Um, Circling back around to our e-commerce platform, I wanted to share our website with you. You can always visit our website at solarflexion.com. Our website is user-friendly and easy to navigate, and you can do this whether you're at your desktop or on your mobile phone. When logging in, you'll notice there's a home page. It'll have a scrolling banner that always shows featured products, services, systems, kits, promotions. It also has a spot where you can request a quote. And when you do that, you will always get a phone call back. So we're big, again, on customer support, customer service, customer care. And I want to personally believe in that human interaction. We also have a tech support section, a facts and knowledge section if you require any additional information or assistance. Also, too, as mentioned, you can shop our website 24/7. We make it easy using the search bar or drop-down menus. For any reason you're unable to find a product, contacting us is easy as well. Our contact information is located at the top and the bottom of our site, and we do also have the Contact Us form available. Right here you can see how nice. We're running a Morningstar promotion. Right now, if you visit our website, you can see that we're offering 10% off of Morningstar products when you use the code MSSAVE10 at checkout. This would be easy too. You just go to controllers, drop down menu to Morningstar, and then you land on this home page, and then you can shop accordingly. So again, visit our website for more information on that, and then again, save your 10% at checkout. I also wanted to share a little bit on our projects and performance. The pictures here, this is from a project we did in Santa Clarita, California for an animal sanctuary. This is a standalone application where we supplied power to run a cow brush. You might be thinking, cows need a brush? Yes, they do. At this animal sanctuary, the animals were rescued, and this brush was the highlight of the day for the cows. I know we're talking about RV and marine applications today. However, I did want to share a little bit of what else we can do. If we can provide power for a cow brush, we can definitely make sure you have the power you need for your RV or boat application. So how do we make sure you have the power you need? We ask you to fill out a simple load calculation form to help us easily calculate your load or usage. And then tell us a little bit about your RV or boat. Tell us about your roof space. Tell us about your mounting requirements or how you want your system to work for you. We then size your system and then make the recommendations. It's important to understand that all these systems are not cookie cutter. We're going to go back one slide, Rob. It's important to understand that all these systems are not cookie cutter because everybody's energy needs are different. Our team will take time to discuss all of this with you. So we believe that our service and support drive the success of Solarflexion. And to show you our appreciation for joining us today, we have a special offer to share. All of today's attendees will receive a complimentary sizing and design analysis that is a $130 value through the month of March when you complete and return a load calculation form. So be sure to check your inbox after the webinar for additional information. We're going to send out emails within 24 hours after today's events. Check your spam, your junk mail. If you do not receive an email from us with this form or instructions, then feel free to reach out and call us and we'll make sure we get that to you. So whether you just want to buy components via the website or you need additional support in sizing a solar kit, Solarflexion has you covered. So why add solar to the RV or boat? What does the right kit mean to you? It can mean peace of mind and freedom. In some cases, depending on your design system, you will have the freedom to go anywhere. Sometimes trying to find RV parks or travel sites with electrical hookups can become less of a struggle. They can be hard, and we want to make it less of a struggle. In most cases, we find that a generator is being used in the RV or boat. We also find that most individuals want to move away from the generator. Hello, solar. That's us. A well-sized kit can increase the life of the batteries. This is important since the batteries are the heart of the system. Batteries are the source of the power and can account for approximately 40% of the kit cost, so protecting them is the primary goal. This is where Morningstar comes in. The solar panel and charge controller act as that built-in trickle charger, making sure the batteries are functioning properly and staying healthy. Rob will go over this later in the presentation. Overall, solar for your RV or boat can reduce your carbon footprint by reducing your dependency on a generator or AC power or shore power. So we want to talk about the renewable tax credit. In some cases, you might qualify to be able to take advantage of the 26% renewable energy tax credit. This would be in consideration if your RV or boat was your primary or secondary home. What this means is any purchase made towards your solar system may be eligible for the tax credit. So what you want to do is you want to talk to your accountant to see if you qualify for any of those tax credits. So let's talk about a little bit about the RV kits. So right now is a great time to consider buying solar for your RV or boat. We have definitely seen a rise in requests in 2020, and that was due to the unfortunate fires and COVID. But we've also seen more people wanting to convert their lifestyle to off-grid living. The price per watt for solar is at an all-time low. There are definitely other benefits, which include expandability and mobility, and I'll let Rob touch on those points later as well. Right now, we know there are various options across multiple price points for your project. When you're ready to buy a standard kit, or if you need a customized solution backed by expert engineering, quality products, and exceptional customer service, please give us a call. So with that, we're ready to jump in and hear from Rob. So Rob, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Again, my name is Rob Rallo. I am the president of Solar System Services. Solar System Services provides engineering services to off-grid and battery-backed up solar systems. Let's go to a little background on myself. I've got over 30 years of experience in off-grid power systems, everything from a standalone to hybrid and also UPS. So pretty much anything with solar and a battery. I'm also very active in the IEEE standards. There are many standards with regards to solar. There are ones for standalone, for hybrids, utility connected, and others. I'm very active in helping to develop and update those. So let's go back to our presentation a little bit. Continuing on with what are the major components of a RV or marine kit? Obviously, the first thing you need is a solar module. And then you're gonna need to somehow attach that solar module to the roof of the RV or the boat. Then you need some output cables to go from there to your charge controller, the next most important thing to make certain your battery gets charged correctly. And then of course the battery, because you need to store the energy somewhere. Now, typically, there's already going to be a battery on your RV or your boat. Generally, that's a house battery. A lot of these vehicles will actually have two batteries. You'll have a house battery and an engine battery. And I'll be talking a bit more about that further on in the presentation. They're going to want overcurrent protection of some form, just in case there's a short circuit in those wires, in case you have a rodent that may gnaw through them and short to the chassis or something. So you're going to want some protection there. And then, of course, terminal blocks to terminate everything. And again, back to the wire to connect it all together. Now, Solarflexion's got 3 different sizes of standard kits. And basically, they're all 12 volts. At least the standard ones are, and they come with 1, 2, or 3 modules. The modules are 140 watts, and they use MC4 connectors. The kit comes with a flat roof mount. That's basically Z brackets, and it comes with a comes with a 30-foot module output cable per module that has the MC4 connector on the one end, and then a 2-hole connector, 1/2-inch connector on the other end that allows you to penetrate through the roof or the side of the boat or vehicle. Also includes a Morningstar SunSaver Duo charge controller. I'm going to talk more about that a little later. And it includes a 6-position ATC fuse block. That's for your overcurrent protection. And it comes with 3 15-amp fuses for the module input and 2 30-amp fuses. That's one for the house battery and one for the engine battery for charging up those. And again, I'll be mentioning that just a little bit more a little later. It also includes a terminal block that allows you to combine the array inputs and 15 feet of wire for connecting up to your batteries and connecting everything all together. So if you think about those parts I mentioned up there, basically those are major components, and the kit includes all those major components. So just to get a little visual of this, you've got your solar module coming in there. On the left side, you've got your 3 140-watt modules, or up to 3. Again, you can have 1, 2, or 3. And if you wanted to, you could just start with one module and then add the other ones later. So that's an option. And again, all the kits do include the fuse block you can see at the bottom, and then the terminal blocks above it that would allow you to combine the solar modules together. And then that goes into your solar input on your SunSaver Duo. And then of course you've got 2 outputs from that. You've got one output to your house battery. That's the battery that's going to power up your refrigerator, your lights, your TV maybe, and stuff like that. And then you have another one that's going to go to your engine to keep that trickle charged. The neat thing, and I'll try to get into some more detail in a minute, but the neat thing about that is that a lot of times you may not be traveling on your RV or your boat, and it may sit there for months at a time. The neat thing about this is this allows the system to be trickle charged so both your house battery and your engine battery are always ready to go. So if it sits for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, it's always been ready to go. You don't have to worry about having dead batteries or anything else like that. So that's the neat thing about this. So this system here, the small one, may be enough just to make certain that you don't have problems with damaging your batteries from sitting or having to worry about recharge your batteries, especially if you have your RV sitting in an RV park somewhere, because a lot of times you can't have it in your backyard. So if you have it sitting someplace and you want to make certain your batteries stay charged, this is a great way to do it. Just putting one of these modules on here with the charge controller and the wiring it up like this, and you can have your system always ready to go whenever you need it. Not have to worry about having dead batteries or having to replace the batteries because they're always being discharged like this. Now this is the standard kit, but it can be customized. You may have a 24-volt system. I know it's very common on a lot of boats. A lot of marine applications are 24, and actually some of them are now moving to 48 volts. I know some of the sailboats are now going to that. There are people even going to 48-volt motors, electric motors on sailboats. That's becoming pretty popular now. I've seen that on some YouTube videos. I think it's actually pretty cool. So that's some neat applications there. So that's some neat other options we have there. And we can go to larger solar arrays. If you've got perhaps a Class A RV, you may have more power because you might need more power because of more appliances and things like that. So we can go to larger solar arrays. With those, though, we're going to have to go to a different charge controller. So we can go to larger ones. We may have to go from, say, the SunSaver Duo to maybe a ProStar or a TriStar or something like that. You may also want to go to a maximum power point tracking option as opposed to a pulse width modulated one. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But going back to sizing the loads, Rebecca mentioned it before, and I'm going to hit that again a little bit, but it's just, I cannot stress that enough, that and the question you're going to ask yourself is which kit is right for me, 1, 2, or 3 modules or something custom? And we don't really know the answer to that because we don't know what you're trying to power up. We don't know how many lights you have. We don't know how big a refrigerator is, or whether you have a microwave, or whether your loads are DC or AC or things like that. So we don't really know. So by filling out a simple form that goes through those things, it might even make you think about, oh, geez, I hadn't thought about that. My cell phone charging, or I've got this DVR or something like that, or it throws all those things in there for you to think about, so that you can go through and check the box basically, and then we can go through and do a sizing for you and let you know whether a 1 module, 2 module, 3 module kit is going to work, and if not, which kit might, so we can do a custom one for you. Other options might be an inverter, because again, you may have AC loads. I know a lot of these marine RVs already have them on there, but if they don't need to add one, we can help you with that. Other battery options, I know sometimes the batteries that are included are not, specifically the house batteries we're talking about, may not be big enough, so we can help you add additional batteries to your system if need be. And also, there are other solar module options as well. There are 12 volt options. If you do have a 24 volt options, if you do have a 24 volt system, and also flexible ones too. There are ones out there that can actually kind of peel and stick to your roof, which is pretty cool. So they can go flush to the roof like that. So that's pretty cool. So some other options like that. There's also tilt up kits. I want to talk more about that in a minute, because you may or may not want to tilt. So we'll cover that in just a minute. And again, other wiring options as well, and other accessories, and shore power connections also. If your RV or boat is already set up for that, there are options for that as well. So let's hit the loads again real fast. We can power up both DC and AC loads, so both can be supported. There's pretty much no load that can't be supported. It's just a matter of having enough inverter power, battery storage, and solar modules to be able to support that. And if you don't have enough solar modules, then if you're connected to either shore power or another AC connection or a generator, that can cover for having a smaller solar array. Most DC loads are typically 12 volts, but you may have other ones as well. Like I said, there are some marine applications that might be 24 volts. But again, there are just so many 12 volt loads now because of RVs, even for the autos and for truckers as well. You've got LED lights that are 12 volts. You've got fans that are 12 volts, refrigerators, TV, cell phone chargers, even blenders that are 12 volts for tailgating and stuff. So you'd be surprised at just how many appliances are already 12 volts. So you may not need to necessarily have an inverter to handle an AC load. Now, if you do have something that is AC based that there is no DC option for, then you will need an inverter. And again, we can help you with that also. Just keep in mind, inverters do have additional losses, by the way. The inverters themselves sitting on standby do consume energy. Even the small ones consume a few watts. Bigger ones can consume up to 20 watts, which is quite a bit. I mean, your inverter can consume as much or more than a light constantly being on, just a standby mode. So if you do have something like that and you have parked it for the season or something like that, we highly recommend you turn that off. Even though the solar array can still trickle charge the battery to support that inverter being turned on, no sense of wasting energy, so we would still recommend turning that off when it's not being used. Again, there really is no limit to what can be powered up. It's just a matter of having enough energy to support it, and whether it makes economic sense or not. Air conditioners are an example of that. They consume a lot of energy and are best powered up when you're running either shore power or a generator. Again, just trying to run those off of solar is very difficult. Some of those can consume somewhere between 750 and 1500 watts. So 400 or 500 watt solar array is not going to be able to power that up at all. And sometimes it's not a matter of how big the load is. Running a microwave that might be 1,000 watts for 5 minutes is not nearly as bad as leaving a light bulb on all the time. So sometimes it's not how big the load is, but how long it's on. And the other thing to consider is heating loads, like a cooktop, heater, hot water heater is another example of that. They're best done with propane. Just because trying to heat using electricity is not the most efficient thing to do. It's usually better to heat that directly with propane or gas or something else like that. Now, we've mentioned this worksheet several times before. You can kind of see it on the right a little bit. There's just a little bit of it, just briefly. Again, it tries to hit some of the main items like lights, TV, refrigerator, radio, things like that. We do also have an AC one as well if you do have AC loads. So we've got covers pretty much all of that. And you can add in your own too if there's something we forgot, like maybe a fan or something like that. You can include that as well. So it's really important, again, to have that filled out to understand exactly how much energy you're consuming, and then therefore we can figure out the correct system for you. How big a solar array you need, or whether you have to supplement with a generator. So we can help figure that all out. Okay, let's get into the solar array just a little bit, some of the considerations for it. One, shading is a big problem. It's very important to understand, although this is kind of the interesting dilemma here. Parking in a shade would be great to keep the RV or boat from getting hot. because you don't want to have to run the air conditioner because that's a lot of energy you don't have. So parking in the shade would seem great, but then parking in the shade means you're not charging up the system from the solar modules. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. So you really don't want to shade the solar modules at all. Something else to consider that is that as all the solar cells are wired in series, shading even a single solar cell can reduce the entire output of that solar module to 0. So it's really important not to have any at all. So again, I mean, I know that's a tough one, but you really don't want to have any. There's kind of that dilemma there, catch-22. You know, if you don't, then the RV is going to get hot. But then if you do, then you're not going to be able to get any solar because again, if you shade just a little bit of it, you're not going to get any output of that. So tough call there, but something else just to consider. Now, tilting the solar array can increase the energy production, but there are some trade-offs there. If your solar module is installed flat, it doesn't really matter which way the RV or the boat are lined up. It doesn't matter if you're facing north, south, east, west. It really makes no difference. So if you do add tilting to the modules, then it really needs to be, the vehicle needs to be aligned east-west so that the module is facing south. Because if it's not, then you can actually reduce your output. So it's very important to make sure that solar module is facing south. So there's the consideration there. If you're in an RV park or someplace, you may not have the luxury of being able to line up the vehicle east-west so that the module can face south. So that's something to consider. Also, you need to, whenever you park it, you got to put it up, then you got to put it down. So you may not want to climb up on your roof and constantly, you know, put it up and take it down, etc., because you certainly cannot travel with it in the tilted position because of the wind load put on there. So you always need to travel with it flat. So if you do want to do that, though, we do have kits options that we can help with that. So there are options available for that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about pulse-width modulation versus PWM. They each have their advantages and disadvantages. So one of the things to consider about PWM is that for those, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, there are other webinars that Morningstar has done on this. So if you really want, or information on the internet, so if you really want more information on PWM versus MPPT, I would recommend watching one of the other webinars or some other videos on that or other information. But the basic idea is that there's a point on a solar module where you get the maximum power out of it. And that can change depending upon a whole lot of conditions, sunlight, temperature, and things like that. So, but the issue is that your typical battery is operating, say, between 10 and 15 volts, but that maximum power point might be at say, 17 volts. You're not really getting that maximum. So the MPPT charge controller can adjust to be able to get to that point to extract a little more energy out of the solar module. And I emphasize a little bit because it's not as much as you might think it is. But there are some other advantages, though. One of the neat things is you can use a higher voltage module. So you could have a 24-volt module, or which is a 72 cell one, or some of these other grid tie modules, which are typically about 60 cells. Again, they're a higher voltage than, say, your standard 12-volt off-grid module. So you can use the higher voltage modules because that maximum power point tracker will then go ahead and step that voltage down to your 12-volt battery. So there's some advantages to that. You can also wire the modules in series. So instead of having, say, 3 output cables coming into your RV or boat and having to have 3 penetrations for that, you can perhaps just have 1 because you can wire all of those modules in series now, instead only having a single output. So, so that's another advantage. The other thing is, again, as I did mention, you can increase production, but that depends on a whole lot of factors: temperature, sunlight conditions, things like that. Disadvantage: it does cost more. So those advantages do come at a cost. Most of them do not have the dual battery charging, so you can only charge the house battery. You can also have the trickle charger on the engine battery. One of the advantages of the Duo, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later here. Also, they can generate slightly more heat. That's indicated by the larger heat sink. It's interesting. I have here a PWM ProStar versus an MPPT ProStar, and you can see how the MPPT is slightly bigger than the PWM. So there's also a space consideration there as well if you have that. But one of the reasons it's bigger is because of the larger heat sink to be able to handle the additional heat dissipation. Advantages of the PWM: it is cheaper, it is simpler, it generates more heat, less heat, excuse me, and some of the models have dual battery charging options as well. So some of the disadvantages, though, is that you can only use it, say, with 12-volt modules, as I mentioned before. Those modules must be wired in parallel, again, requiring additional cables or larger ones because you may have a voltage drop issue. And there are times when you may not be able to fully utilize the entire solar array, again, because you're not operating at that maximum power point. Now, I mentioned before that in some cases you may just not be able to get enough energy from the solar array if you've got some larger loads or something like that. So the solar system can work in parallel with other charging devices. So it can still work in parallel if you were connected to shore power or if you've got a generator or something like that. So there are other options as well. And generally, those additional charging options would be paralleled at the battery or some other type of panel. You may have some type of a disconnect panel for that or something like that. So, but either there or at the battery, they can be paralleled at that point. One of the things you do want to consider, though, with that is that you just want to make certain that if you do have too many charge sources, the only consideration or concern is you just want to make certain you don't recharge the battery too quickly. In other words, if you have, let's say you have a small 100 amp hour battery, you don't want to recharge with 100 amps. That's too fast. So you need to make certain that you don't have too much current. That's generally not a problem with most solar systems, but if you start adding in additional chargers like a generator or shore power or something like that, you may end up having a little bit too much. So you will want to double check that, or just contact us and we'd be happy to double check that for you. As long as we know what size generator you have or what your shore power connection is, we can certainly double check that and just make certain you're not overloading your battery and potentially damaging it from too fast of a recharge. Something else to consider with adding the solar modules to your system is you do have some additional maintenance. You might need to clean the modules occasionally, especially if they're flat, because you're getting a lot of dust buildup, dirt buildup, bird droppings possibly. So, occasionally you do want to clean those because that will decrease the output. You also want to check for loose connections. I mean, you're on a moving vehicle, whether it be an RV or a boat. So there are going to be some vibrations there, and you may have some loosening connections. So always, with any system, you always just want to double check your wiring connections, make sure they haven't loosened. For the same reasons, you want to check to make certain that there are no chafed wires as well, because again, if they're rubbing against something, it could cause some chafing. And you don't want any shorts because of that. You want to check for corrosion, especially at those connections, especially if you're on a boat, obviously, or somewhere in a coastal environment. And then just double check occasionally charge controller, make certain it is working properly and is recharging your batteries correctly. So just do a double check on that. Most of them do have little LED indicators that'll tell you how it's doing, and I'll go on that a little bit more on the Duo when we start talking about the SunSaver Duo. And while some of the other things to check is, or if you do have problems with your systems, the best place to go is that charge controller. It'll give you a lot of indications what's going on. But before that, generally, you're not going to do that until you find out you have a failure. Usually it's going to be your load's not working correctly, or you're going to find your battery's at a very low voltage. So usually when you're going to have that, that's usually a quick indication there's a problem. Typically that problem is going to be the load is too great for the system. You left the lights on type of thing, or you're running the microwave too much or something like that. It's generally going to be the problem. It could also be that if you may have a problem with the solar module. Again, you've got some bird droppings on there or dust and it's decreased the output or something like that. So you would just want to try to figure out whether you've got too big a load for the system or whether there's something else going on. But most of the time, 90% of the time, it's going to be the system is too great, the load's too great for the system. Or again, you may have had cloudy weather, or what may have worked, say, in the Southwest doesn't necessarily work in the Northeast. So you may have moved your vehicle to a different location where you're not quite getting the same output as well. So also keep that in mind. Again, when I mentioned looking, again, going back to the solar array, just double check the wiring, look for shading, things like that. And of course, the other quick fix is if you are using too much load, just decrease the load. Use the lights less or something like that. Don't use the microwave. Use the stove instead, which would hopefully be propane. Or just plug into shore power at that point. Again, turn the generator on, use a generator. If it's a regular problem, add more solar modules if you have space. Unfortunately, when you're on a vehicle, an RV or or a boat, you're going to have limited space, sadly. So you can only add so much before you start running out. And you may have to go ahead and add a generator or use the generator more than you'd like to be able to compensate for that. So now let's talk about the SunSaver Duo. The SunSaver Duo is a very unique charge controller, and I'm going to get into what makes it so unique. But let's talk about a little bit of the ratings of it. It is designed for a 12-volt system only. So if you have a 24-volt system, this will not work for you. It does have a maximum array input of 25 amps, and that's it. So again, we sized those 3 modules for that reason. Those 3 modules pretty much about max it out. So if you're going to use more than the 340 or 150 watt modules, you're going to have to go to a different charge controller. It is a pulse width modulated one as well, so it is fairly simple. But it is temperature compensated. Oh, very important, very, very important. You always want to use temperature compensation when charging batteries, especially in an environment like this. Temperature compensation will increase the voltage when it is colder out, allowing the batteries to charge better, and it will decrease it when it's too warm out so that the batteries don't get overcharged. So it's very important for proper charging the batteries to have temperature compensation. This unit does not have a low voltage disconnect go, so it doesn't have an LVD. If you want an LVD, there are other options for that. You can still use the SunSaver Duo. You could add, say, a TriStar or something else to the system if you did want that. So there are options there. Just go ahead and contact us. We'd be happy to help you with that. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about in just a minute, I'll talk a little more about this dual battery charging thing, but that's really pretty cool because it allows you to both charge the house battery and the engine battery at the same time. But let's talk about a couple of the options that are not on there, which would be the remote temperature sensor and a remote display. So the neat thing about the remote temperature sensor is that you may be installing the SunSaver Duo in a different area than where the battery is. And it's very important, again, as I mentioned earlier, for proper charging the batteries to have that temperature compensation. So you can go ahead and put a temperature sensor at the battery and then run it over to the SunSaver. I'm not 100% positive on the length of that cable, but I think they're somewhere between 15 feet and 25 feet. So it should be long enough to get across your vehicle, hopefully. And again, there's also an option for the display, which is neat. So you can add that. So you can, again, have this stuff hidden away in a compartment, and then through the wall, you can have a little panel meter there that will tell you what your battery voltage is and how it's doing and things like that. Now, again, since the SunSaver Duo is a dual battery charger, you can charge both the house battery and the engine battery, and it's got a neat option. It's got a prioritization option. So you can basically say, hey, I want 90% of the energy to go to the house battery and then 10% to the engine battery, or you can do a 50-50. Now, the neat thing is it doesn't really matter which way you go, because once a battery is fully charged, either one, all the energy automatically goes to the remaining battery until it's fully charged, and then it'll just sit there and trickle charge both batteries, say if you've parked it for the season type of thing, until it'll just keep them topped off basically at that point. And again, the neat thing is the display will tell you how it's going. It's backlit just in case it's dark, so that helps a lot. It's got some LED indicators as well. So again, it'll give you some status information, and it'll tell you how the batteries are being charged and what their voltages are, things like that. So lots of neat information there you can get with the display option. Now, the way you would change this prioritization would be with a dip switch. The SunSaver Duo does have a dip switch with 5 different settings. And the neat thing is that it does allow for different types of battery charging. You can say, and the neat thing is that so you can have, say, a AGM or valve regulated battery, say for your house battery, and then maybe a water flooded battery for your engine battery. So the neat thing is you can actually have different technologies for each battery, which is really cool. So again, you could have one setting for your house batteries, maybe, and a different one for the engine batteries, which is a really neat option. Again, so the typical for, say, your valve regulated battery, you would have a voltage, say, of 14.1 volts versus, say, 14.4 for your wet battery, because you want to stir up that electrolyte a little bit, make sure it gets fully charged. And then either way, once the batteries are fully charged it drops down into a 13.7 volt charge, float voltage charge. And again, so dip switch number 3 sets up that prioritization. And then number 4 is number used for customization. So again, you could plug in there and change some of the factory settings if you wanted to. That's another option as well to customize this. And then number 5 is regulation type, which is just going to be the PWM really. Okay, this is kind of a neat little diagram that kind of shows you how this works. Again, for your RV or caravan, you're going to have the solar module going in, or modules going into the SunSaver Duo. Then you're going to have one output to, say, the house battery, number 1, and then another one going out to the engine battery, which is number 2. Notice in this one, because you have a metal chassis on a RV or caravan, you can then go ahead and connect, if you wanted to, you can connect your negatives up to the chassis of that vehicle. So that's kind of a neat thing. So you can do that, as would be the case with most RV or cars and things like that. So you can go ahead and use the common chassis ground if you want to. You do not have to. Now on a boat, that is not an option because a lot of them are fiberglass or wood or some other option. So in that case, you're going to have to definitely run the negatives. Now notice that the one negative, the whole of this is that this is a negative ground system, and the battery negatives must be the same. So you cannot, so your house battery negative and your engine battery negative must both be connected together. They have to be common. You can't have those floating. They have to be the same. That is the one problem with that. I don't think it's a case. So in most cases, I would think that they should be connected together just for safety purposes. I don't see that being a problem or an issue in any case. But just keep that in mind. Just to go through some of the LEDs, you've got some status LEDs on the SunSaver Duo telling you how it works. And again, I was mentioning that before about how you can go here for troubleshooting. If it's flashing, if it's flashing green, then you know it's charging, everything is good. If it's flashing red, then you've got an error going on. It can tell you again if it's mostly off with just an occasional blip, then that means your nighttime mode. It can also tell you whether if it's green solid, then you're bulk charging. If you've got it flashing, then it's in a regulation mode essentially. And again, if you're in either red mode, that's not a good thing. Some of the errors might be, say you've got a reverse polarity on the battery, the solar array, might be a high temperature condition, especially if you've stuffed it in a compartment and it's not being able to dissipate the heat correctly. It could also be an issue potentially with a temperature sensor if it's been damaged or something like that. So just some error messages there. Okay, so just to quickly summarize what we've covered here, we've talked about the advantages of adding a solar array to your boat or RV. And again, I think they're numerous. Again, everything from just keeping a trickle charge while it's parked for the season, or everything from trying to extend your time somewhere without having to run the generator a lot, or having to plug in the shore power. I think it's a great way to extend your time. There are standard and custom kits available. We talked about some of the components that go into it, or the critical components that go into it. We've mentioned the lid multiple times. And the importance of knowing what those are to be able to choose the correct system for your vehicle. Talked just briefly about system sizing. I mentioned whether the tilt or not the tilt, and I'll tell you that is a tough one because there are advantages and disadvantages to each. Same with the PWM versus MPPT charge controllers. Again, there are advantages and disadvantages of each. And just again, the wonderful option with the SunSaver Duo that allows you to dual battery charging there, that allows you to keep your engine battery charged while still keeping your house batteries topped off and charged as well. So with that, right before we get to the questions, I think Solarflexion just had a really brief poll question we'd like to ask everybody. Let me go ahead and launch that. And Rebecca, you want to talk about the question real fast?
Oh yeah, you can see that on your screen. So which is the biggest concern when you think about adding solar to your RV or boat? Is it price? Is it customer service and engineering support? We would just like to know. We know, again, there's a lot of places you can shop. We just want to see what's important for the customer, for you guys. So if you guys would go ahead and answer that, and then we can get some feedback.
Well, it looks like a little better than half the people voted, so I'm gonna go ahead and end it there, and looks like it's almost about 50-50 on
Okay.
that. So you can just see that real briefly, I think. Okay.
Okay.
So yep, just real brief again. Like I said, it's about 50-50. It looks like. So that's interesting to know. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and take some questions and see uh, see what else we need to talk about.
Hey, terrific. Hey, this is Mark. Great job, Rob and Rebecca. We do have quite a few questions that came in, so I appreciate everyone attending, and let's get to some of these questions. Let's see. As I mentioned before, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar, so you'll get that in an email tomorrow. Had a couple questions about that. There was an interesting question that Tom asks. Let's see. Yeah, he says, when the LV disconnect fault is active, is there adequate sun power? If there is adequate sun power, will the charge the solar produces be enough to raise the voltage to clear the default and allow the system to perform without having to put an external charge in batteries by hooking up to shore power or starting the boat and allowing the alternator to charge the battery?
Uh, the answer to that is yes, eventually. Depending upon how big your battery is and how big your solar array is and how much sunlight you have, it could take anything from a few hours to a day or a couple of days. So it would take a while, but yes, eventually that battery get recharged from the solar array enough to then have that low voltage disconnect reconnect. So it would automatically reconnect the load at that point. Assuming, of course, that there wasn't damage to, say, the solar array or something like that. If you have a disconnected cable or some other problem, then that wouldn't be the case. But if it was just because you had too much load, then yes, eventually it will automatically reconnect. And again, how long that takes is a huge variable depending upon sunlight conditions and the battery and things like that.
Okay. I see a question from Brett. Let's see, he's talking about sizing. He says, as a general rule of thumb, would you agree with sizing battery storage double the array size? For example, a 2 kilowatt array would equal or be appropriate for a 4 kilowatt battery storage.
Let me see. Hang on one second. We do a couple of quick numbers.
While you're doing that, and I'll just make sure I'm reading this right again. So he's saying, as a general rule of thumb, would you agree with sizing battery storage double array size? For example, 2 kilowatt array equals a 4 kilowatt battery storage. That's the question.
Yeah, because normally I don't work in kilowatts. Normally I work in amp hours. I would say he said a 2 kilowatt array and a 4 kilowatt hour battery. Was that correct?
Yeah, 2
That'd be
kilowatt.
quite. That would be. That would probably be. I think the solar array might be a little oversized to the battery at that point. In other words, you may only have like about 24-hour storage or something like that. So again, you really should size it to the load, not so much the solar array. That's the most important thing, because basically the battery is sized to the load, and you size the solar array to that. There is kind of a general rule of thumb and a ratio you can use. So I can see what he's trying to do there, and that is true. And then that ratio, I think the solar array is slightly bigger than the battery, which means you may want to increase the battery size slightly based upon that. But again, I would want to size it to the load so much, not to the solar array. The solar array and battery should be sized to the load. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of IEEE standards about that. In this case, I'd refer to IEEE 1562, which goes into that. And again, you always start with the load.
Okay, very good. And I see a question from Satanchu, who is asking, what is the energy capacity of the RV kits? I think you kind of talked about several, so maybe if you could do like a small, medium, and large.
Yeah, basically there at this point, the standard kit is 1, 2, or 3 modules, and it's just 140 watt modules. So it would be 140, 280, and then what was that 420 or 420 watts at that point. The battery we're assuming is already included with your RV or boat. Generally, those come with the house battery already. And usually with some type of shore power connection as well. We're just adding solar to it at this point to be able to, again, extend your time without having to plug in or to reduce your generator runtime or something like that. And again, those are the standard kits. However, we have custom options that allow you to, fill the top of the vehicle, whatever you want to do. So there are options there, type of thing.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that question. Appreciate the answer. All right, let's see. Okay, question here from Bert. This was about 15 minutes into the presentation. He asked, why are you fusing single or excuse me, I guess he's saying, why are you using single modules? I think you showed maybe there was one kit with a single module, but there's other kits with multiple modules. So
That's correct. Like as an example, you may just want to be trickle charging the batteries because you parked it for 3 or 6 months or whatever for the season. So you could just do one module that will allow you to just trickle charge your batteries type of thing. So that might be enough, or you may want more. Again, there are various reasons to have different size solar arrays on top of your vehicle.
okay, great. We had somebody who thanked us for the information about the grounding. So that was very nice. Terrific. Let's see. Okay, so here's a question coming in that asks, they're curious what flex panels would be recommended for maximum life in marine environment. It says warranties typically much shorter than rigid panels.
That is absolutely correct. We don't actually sell a lot of those or use a lot, and there's a couple reasons why. They're kind of neat on the one hand. On the other hand, yeah, the life expectancy is not quite as good. So the warranty is not as good. The other problem is if you do try to adhere them, and then when it fails, say in 10 years or something like that, trying to peel it back off is going to be a problem too. So there are some things to consider about that. And yes, they're a little bit more money as well. They're more expensive. So for those reasons, a lot of people do like to go with the normally framed modules. Now there are advantages though. If you've got a curved surface you're trying to install it on, that's great. And things like that. If you're going to try to walk on that surface, even though you shouldn't technically walk on them, you sort of can. So I've seen people do that too. But again, it's just like anything else. There are advantages and disadvantages to doing that.
Okay, and I see a follow-up question asking, how about heat pumps sized for mobile use? For example, Tesla. Are these available more generally?
I have to say I'm not really familiar with that, so I do not know. I don't really have an answer for that question.
All right, that's something we can take offline. But thanks for that question. All right, let's see. What's this question coming in? Let's see. Oh, okay, this is a statement, not a question coming in. Let's see. Okay, Brett asked another question here. He says, let's see. Could we consider a portable array or module? He said, is this a good idea if I want to park in the shade? Has this type of design been built before?
Yes, and that is a great question, and thank you for bringing that up. We actually now have options for that. We have some really cool options. It's a field deployable system, and this is what's really cool about it, is they're plastic, and you actually fill it with dirt or rocks, and you attach a solar module to it, and you can put it wherever you want, and then run the cables over to your RV. So you absolutely could do that. You could absolutely, and it's, again, it's portable. When you're done, you just disconnect the module from it, dump the dirt or rocks back out on the ground, pack it back up and take it with you? That's a great question. And again, one of those custom options we have. So if you just give us a call, we'd be happy to try to help you with their solutions. But yeah, we have a great option for that.
All right, good enough. All right, so moving on, we have a question that asks about, again, this one's about shading. Let's see. It says, how about panels with individual cell bypass diodes, FETs? These would be more shade tolerant, though may not be generally available.
All solar modules have bypass diodes in them. But if you're using a 12-volt module and you've bypassed part of it, then you're not going to have enough voltage left to charge your battery. If you have a higher voltage module and are using a maximum power point tracker, that is true. You might be able to get a little bit more out because it will bypass it, but still you're going to have reduced output. So it depends upon the technology you're working with, basically the voltage of the solar module, whether you're using a maximum power point tracker or not, voltage of the battery being you're working with and things like that. So that is true, you can, but you're still going to have an effect there either way. So again, we do recommend avoiding it if you can, because again, you're going to have a reduced output no matter what. And whether it's enough to reduce the entire solar rate to zero, or whether it's just reduces it to half or a quarter, whatever it is, it's still quite a bit of a reduction. So we generally recommend avoiding it if you can.
All right, here's a question coming in that asks, what are the unique selling points for RV solar? And I guess this would both be for Rebecca and Rob.
So the question is just, I'm sorry, say it.
Sure,
What
I'll
are the
read this
unique
one.
selling points?
Sure. Yeah, what are the unique selling points for RV solar?
I think unique is, you can take this anywhere, right? What we said earlier, it allows you the freedom and mobility. And again, with more people potentially looking into being off grid and being able to travel more or just get around, we do have a lot of requests for individuals who are looking to make this their new home. So us being able to make sure it's as comfortable as possible and like the right fit. I know we had talked about using some generators, some propane, things like that, but to size the kit accordingly so you can live comfortably with solar, so you can rely less on those. That would be where I think, Rob, I don't know if you have anything different as far as
Yeah,
unique goes.
and I always add on to that. I mean, a lot of times I see people, you use it only a few times a year. You're out there traveling around for a week or two, and the vehicle sits parked for months. And I've seen a
Mhm.
lot of people have issues with the batteries going dead and having to replace batteries. And actually, the military, by the way, has a very serious problem with this. You'd be surprised at how many millions, actually hundreds of millions of dollars a year, are spent replacing batteries in dead Humvees because they sit for months without being used. So actually, the military can take advantage of this stuff, actually. So yeah, and the same thing happens to an RV or other vehicle. If it sits for too long a time without that battery getting recharged, it just deteriorates the battery. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, it's kind of neat right now. You can take advantage of. And again, I would say talk to your accountant, but these might be tax deductible. You may be able to get 26% of the cost back of the system off your taxes. Depending
Correct.
upon whether your vehicle qualifies or not. And again, I think you have to have a toilet in there and some other things to qualify as a second home type of thing or something like that. And your tax status and stuff. So I would definitely consult with your accountant. But that's another thing too, is that some of this cost and expense could be deferred on your taxes as well.
Correct.
Great question. Great question. Great answers, folks. So let's move on. Here's a question about modules in series with MPPT controllers. So the question is, what is a common maximum voltage a Morningstar controller can handle if we are wiring modules in series?
Well, if you most of the morning, well, it depends on the Morningstar charge controller. I believe double check me on this though, and I'm pretty positive the ProStar MPPT is good up to 120 volts, maximum
Yep.
per circuit voltage. The TriStars are all good to 150 volts, unless you go with the 600 volt TriStar. But you'd have to have so many modules in series to get up to that on your RV. I think you would have covered your RV and then some. So generally, I doubt you would use a 600 volt unit, but yeah, definitely 120 or 150 volts. I think even like the Sunsaver MPPT, I think what is that, around Is that 60 volts or 80 volts for the SunSaver MPPT?
I'm wrestling between 60 and 75. I can't remember which. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely lower than the ProStar
yeah, but
MPPT is
you can
definitely
only
120 and TriStar MPPT is 150.
Yeah, the SunSaver though is again the SunSaver MPPT is pretty small. You can only get like
Yep.
1 or 2 modules max on that one, so that's
Yeah.
probably not going to be very economical for you.
Okay, so thanks for that question. Let's see. Here's a question coming in that asks, can this system be sold to long-haul intercountry buses?
I don't see why it couldn't. Again, I think as long as you follow all the rules and regulations on the installation to make sure you've met all the safety requirements, yeah, I mean, you could throw some solar modules up on top of a bus and
Yeah.
power. Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't.
Okay, very good.
I think it just all comes down to that load, the load requirement, the space you have, and how, like Rob was saying, that we can make sure that it's going to work. So once we talk to the customer, we can figure that out.
All right, very good. So we have another question here that Mike is asking. He asks, if you have multiple charge sources, do they have to supply exactly the same output voltage?
What'll happen is that they will on their own, because what ends up happening is they're all going to supply the voltage to charge the battery, and whichever one has the higher voltage will typically end up taking over. So say if the battery is typically when a battery is being bulk charged though, most devices are going to put out the maximum amount of current they can because the battery is driving the voltage. But then once you start getting up to regulation voltage, you might find one device or the other may have a slightly higher voltage, even if it's just a tenth or hundredth of a volt, and we'll end up doing the finish charging at that point. So generally what will happen is one of them will take over, depending upon how the voltages are set on the devices. So that's generally what will happen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And sometimes you can intentionally control that. If you wanted to, you could do your finish charging with, say, your shore power charger, or if you wanted to, you could do the finish charging with the SunSaver Duo, or however you want to handle it, so you can adjust those voltages accordingly. But generally what will happen is they will be the same as the battery voltage, as they're both bulk charging. In other words, you're doing a maximum current charge at that point. And then once you start getting to the full charge voltage of the battery, that regulation voltage, whichever one has a slightly higher voltage setting, whichever charger will then kind of take over and do the finish charge at that point.
All right, thank you for that question and thank you for the answer. Let's see, this one question coming up, I'm not quite sure the acronym, but I'll read it and maybe we'll have to take it offline or clear that up. But the question is, what could be the USP for the long haul vehicle buses that we just talked about a little while ago? I'm not quite sure what the acronym
I don't know
USP
either.
means here. Maybe,
I'm not certain. I'd have to look that up. I'm not certain.
Can you say that
okay.
again?
Yep, sure.
USP.
Capital
USP.
USP. I don't know if
But
that's.
but what
Hey,
was the
Mark.
question though?
Mark, it means unique selling proposition.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's okay. I had my tech hat on here, so
Yeah, yeah, no.
that's
And I think the question is addressed at, how do you sell this technology to buses and other users like that, from what I read in the question.
yeah. Okay, so if that's one we can answer, I'll throw that to Rebecca and Rob. What is the unique selling proposition for the long haul vehicle buses, if we know that, because this just kind of came up on this webinar.
I'm gonna chime in, but I'm gonna lean on Rob on this one because I'm gonna ask, for the long haul buses, I'm sure like the, lights, restroom, thinking like, just pretty much everything that an RV would have. But I've never really done a long haul bus. I've never had any experience with doing anything like that. But I'm almost gonna say it's almost the same unique selling points as an RV.
I'd agree. I say the same thing, Rebecca. I'd go back to our advantages of adding solar to the system, and I'd go back to the same selling points. I'd agree with that.
Okay, terrific. Very good. Moving on, let's see. A question here from Scott. He says, I believe he's talking about the SunSaver Duo here. He says, can that be used with a 400-watt array?
Yes, if assuming the array is a 12-volt nominal, so if it's say if the solar cells are 30, basically there are 36 solar cells in series. So if your output voltage is a nominal 12 volts for charging a 12-volt battery, then yes, absolutely you could.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for that question and answer. Let's see. So a question here coming in. Does temperature compensation work the other way around? In other words, voltage increases with cold.
Yes, I thought I mentioned that. Yes, yeah, the colder the battery, the higher voltage you need. So yes, it would, the SunSaver would, or actually any of the Morningstar devices would automatically increase that voltage to better charge the battery. So yes, it does, absolutely. So yes, you increase the voltage when it's cold and you decrease the voltage when it's warm.
All right, very good. And a question from Drew. Is it safe to add extra modules beyond 3, or do fuses blow when you do this?
Well, what'll end up happening is that we've kind of sized it to the maximum 25 amps of that SunSaver Duo. So if you were to go higher than that, then we would just go to a different charge controller. Again, the negative would be now you've lost that trickle charge option, but we can still add another module with a separate charge controller to trickle charge your battery. We could add even something smaller, like maybe our 20 or 30 watt module that's specifically designed for just trickle charging that battery, the engine battery, and then going to maybe something bigger like a ProStar or a TriStar at that point. So again, it's more of that you're restricted to just a 25 amps maximum for the Duo would be the issue. But there are other options. Like I said, that would be a custom design that we can help you with, and we could select at that point the best charge controller to be able to work with the size solar array you need.
Okay, here's a nice question coming in about the SunSaver Duo. He says, with the SunSaver Duo controller, is there a profile for each output? For example, AGM profile for one and lithium iron phosphate for the other, or flooded for the other, for that matter.
That's a great question, and actually, I would defer. I haven't done custom settings on a Duo before, but I would think you could do a custom setting for that, but I'm not 100% positive, and I would defer you to the Morningstar technical experts on that one. But yeah, I would think so. I don't see why you couldn't
Yeah, I
go
know
into the
that's in
custom
our
settings and
operation
adjust
manual.
that.
I know that's they address that in an operation manual. I'm pretty sure you can, but yeah, I would consult the manual first before before you do that. All right, so great question. Let's see. Yeah, okay, good. We're talking about the Duo there. Scott just cleared that up. All right. Let's see. Is temperature, is that at the battery or at the display for the remote meter?
The remote meter temperature will be whatever the battery temperature is. So if you're using a remote temperature probe, you'll be reading that. If you don't use it, then we're reading the onboard temperature sensor on the SunSaver Duo. But that'll be reading the temperature being used for the compensation for the correction.
Okay, very good. Let's see. Here's a question. Let's see. Why would temperature compensation be recommended when using lithium-ion batteries?
I would, if you're using lithium batteries, I would refer to the lithium battery manufacturer's recommendations on that. But generally, they still have issues as well with that type of thing. So you would look into that. I would also be concerned and careful about using lithium batteries in RV applications, as RVs can go into climates which can get extreme cold or extreme warm. And there are temperature limitations on what those batteries can do. So I would, before doing that, I would investigate further into the requirements of those batteries and see what is needed for them for not just both charging, but their operating range as well.
Okay, very good. All right, here's a question from Les. Let's see, question reads, if I want to use a remote panel with my existing panels, do I need another charge controller?
I'm not understanding the question. If you were using the remote panel with the existing panel.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what he's getting at here. If I want to use a remote panel, I don't know if he's talking about, we did mention this a little bit before, I think, that somebody said, hey, an innovative solution, like if they wanted to park in shade and then hook up a panel in the sun and wire it to their RV. I'm kind of guessing maybe that's what they're talking about. We can take this question offline if we don't have an exact answer.
Yeah, I'm not fully understanding the question. Sorry.
Okay, not a problem. All right. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about lithium batteries. We had a couple questions on that. We can email the PDF of the presentation, or that's actually in your handouts, folks, so you can download that.
Yeah, and again, on the lithium battery charging, I mean, Morningstar does have, you guys do have some of your lithium battery partners where you have specific set points for those batteries. So I would also refer you not just to the battery manufacturer, but also to Morningstar technical team to help you out with that as well, with those specific settings.
Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, if you go to our website under our resources tab, there's a energy storage partner program menu item. So if you go to our website and click on resources and energy storage partner program, you'll see about 20 battery brands that we work with to help identify optimal settings for your lithium and other battery chemistries. So thanks for reminding me about that, and everyone else here, Rob, thanks. Okay, so question here from Jose, let's see. What about installing solar panels on a Airstream RV? Is the shape of the RV a problem on the installation of them?
No, we could do one of two things. That might be, again, a case for a flexible module, might be kind of nice. But if not, what you could do is we can add standoffs such that the solar module would still be flat, but it would kind of go over the curve. So we would just need to know, we'd have to run a few calculations to figure out whether we need like a 4-inch or a 6-inch riser or something like that. But yeah, you can go ahead and just lift it up so it's above the curve, and then you can just go flat across from there, from one side to the other. So yeah, we got options for that. Not a problem.
Okay, and then there's a question about a couple questions here about using Morningstar charge controllers with other system components, other batteries, modules, or inverters. So basically saying how well does Morningstar integrate with other brands of components. I can pose that one to both Rebecca and Rob.
I'll chime in first. I mean, yeah, the
Okay.
Morningstar products work with almost everything for the most part. I mean, again, you just need to make certain you select the correct Morningstar product for your application, whether it be custom settings for the battery or whether it be making certain you have the right voltage, for the solar module, not too much current, depending upon the charge controller being used. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, there are no issues. It's just a matter of, again, selecting the correct Morningstar product to make certain you set it correct based upon your solar modules, batteries, and other components in the system. And again, we can help you with all of that.
Right. I was just going to say, when it comes in that we circle back around to the sizing, filling out the load calculation form, because Morningstar can work with different variety of different modules, different batteries, everything. So we're able to go ahead and design that system and help you answer those questions. So yes, that's the short answer.
Okay, well, thanks for that question. Thanks for the answer. Let's see, a question from Charles coming in. Let's see. Okay, why can't I adjust a Morningstar charge controller via a remote meter? He says only the metered ProStar, that's either the ProStar PWM or the ProStar MPPT, allows these adjustments like your absorption voltage settings and float settings and
For the meter?
LVD. Yeah, yes. He's basically saying it's more, I guess, stating a point that the remote meter doesn't allow you to adjust that's just a digital display. It doesn't allow you to change settings.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah, no, and that's correct. But again, it's Morningstar has different products for different applications, and if that's something you want, there are other Morningstar products, as was mentioned, like the ProStar or the TriStar that you can do that with. But again, for the most part, you don't want to. For the most part, those settings are set it and forget it. Like you really, unless you've changed your battery out or something like that to a different type of battery, different technology, you should just be setting that once, and then that, based upon the battery being used, and then that should be it.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that question answer. Let's see. Here's one question from Daniel. Let's see. The sizing tool that you talked about during this webinar. Let's see. It says the sizing tool you will send us, for how long can we use it?
The sizing tool is not really a sizing tool. It's a load worksheet, and basically what it does is it allows us to do a sizing for you. So you're gonna go ahead and fill it out and say, hey, I've got a refrigerator, a TV, a couple of lights, and you're gonna try to identify what you have on your RV or boat um, that is that's consuming energy, and for how long. I'm like, we have the lights on for say 4 hours at night. We watch a TV for 2 hours, or we run a microwave for 10 minutes or whatever it is. So the idea is to try to identify that. Once we identify those loads, then we can do a sizing that's specific to your RV basically.
Okay, I think we got time for just one more question because we're well past the hour, but thanks everyone for staying with us. Here's the last question. Let's see. From Greg, when you need a larger amp hour battery bank, can you add new batteries to your existing batteries?
Oh, good question.
Oh, that's a good one. The answer is generally not. If you have relatively new batteries, and I mean probably like a year old, no more than two, and if it's the exact same battery, okay, then you sort of can. But generally, as a rule of thumb, you do not want to mix different age batteries, definitely not different technology batteries or different size batteries. So again, it would have to be an exact one. And then again, you want it to be relatively new, like within a year or something like that. Because otherwise that's just not going to work. It's actually can be very bad. Not that things will blow up, but you'll basically just damage all the batteries. As Rebecca said earlier, the batteries are one of the most expensive parts of a solar system, up to 40% of the cost, around 40% of the cost. So you don't want to do something like that and then have to go out and buy a brand new set of very expensive batteries.
Okay, if you want to go ahead, thank you everybody. If you want to go ahead to the thank you slide, just one last question. I think this is probably for Rebecca. Steve is asking, will you install on RVs that are brought to you, or have you vetted out any installers that meet your quality criteria? So
That's a great question.
Yeah, go ahead if you want to answer that.
We do not do installations here, but so a lot of times we do get the DIYers who already they're doing it themselves, or they have someone they're working with. What I like to do, especially so around our local areas, yes, I do have places to refer people to. I always recommend if you need to have anything done, you should probably check with your local RV supplier. A lot of them are doing the installs now. But we can definitely help you get the right size and equipment and know what you're getting and get that to you. But like locally here, I do have a handful of places we can recommend to for installation.
Okay, good information. And at this point, I'd like to just leave this thank you slide up here for a few seconds. We're going to close things out. If you do need any other additional information or to contact any of us, you can see all of the contact information there for Solar System Services, Solarflexion, and Morningstar. You can go to our websites as well. There's a lot of information on those sites, and stay tuned for future webinars. So with that, let's close things out. We'll end the broadcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks so much for attending.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.